Welcome to the Schulich Startups Podcast, Pilot Edition, first ever broadcast here from the Rob and Cheryl McEwen Graduate Research and Study Building at the Schulich School of Business. We're going to have a good time today. Got a great guest. First, my co-host, Vito Giovannetti, Schulich entrepreneur, founder of Treasured. Hey, Vito.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Excited for our first podcast and pilot. Looking forward to learning about your journey and your story.
And our first ever guest. This one goes down in history and will be recorded forever. So, gentlemen, let's make it good.
Yeah.
We have Wyatt Shaw, one of our Schulich Startups founders from Portl Media. Welcome, Wyatt.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. Happy to be the inaugural guest. Looking to share some wisdom and hopefully some fun and interesting stories about how Portl got started and where we are today.
That's great. So let's get at it. Like you're the one of the past winners from the Schulich Startup Night, number 8, right?
I believe it was number. I'm going to look to you.
I looked it up earlier today. It was number 8.
Yeah.
So
It
number 8.
It was a while ago now.
It was a while ago. But back then when we first met, what was that first moment where you had that idea? I think you were riding around in the back of a rideshare vehicle, and a vision came to you out of nowhere. And what was that?
Yeah. Or at least that's the way that we, pitched it to win the
story.
Schulich startup.
No, that's the one I remember.
No, of course. I think, it initially, was one of those almost shower moments. But the way Portl came to be is exactly as you mentioned. I mean, we had been spending an increasing amount of time in the back of rideshare vehicles. And I think that, as we were, ideating around different things to do, as most, this idea sort of came out of something else. But we took a look at our rideshare history, and at one point we noticed that I think I've spent 10 days, all together in the back of a rideshare vehicle. That's a lot of time, a lot of idle time.
What's it up to now? You must be at
Oh, it's in the months.
A lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. But there's got to be, a more entertaining, better way to spend that time, right? And a lot of exciting opportunities that come along with that amount of idle time or captive time in front of an audience. So that's really how the idea came to be, and it's certainly been, added to since then. But the original idea, just to get some entertainment in front of passengers, experiencing all that time like we were in the back of rideshare vehicles.
And just to give people some context, now, a year and a half or so later, you've got, how many cars are you taking care of with your entertainment system? Yeah,
so we were lucky enough to be live in both Canada and the United States. The numbers are ever growing, quite honestly. One of my co-founders, Dan, is probably installing a screen right now in Philadelphia. I'd say for round numbers, we're closing in on that 1,000 mark, which is pretty exciting. Admittedly, a little bit more in the States from a deployment number right now, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But Toronto is an excellent market, and has always been our first and our pilot market, and one that we're excited to grow.
So approaching 1,000 screens, but I was thinking about earlier today, your very first pitch at the startup night, and the thing that struck me is that you guys won that competition, and if I remember correctly, you won it with a cardboard printout of what one of your screens would look like if you produced it. And that's what we tell people a lot is you don't have to necessarily build the technology. You have to be able to get that prototype, show it to people, and you won the judges over with a piece of cardboard, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And it was actually something we deliberated over quite a bit. Is do we bring the cardboard cutout or not, right? But it was essentially it was a tablet that had been put on die cut essentially and put on Bristol board. It was by all intents and purposes our hope for what the platform could be. And I'm glad to hear, it won the judges over. The platform has, is real now, which is great. But has, evolved quite a bit since. But everything starts with a vision, right? And, just finding a way to, even at those infancy stages, deliver that vision or share that vision of what could be with whoever you're talking to, I think is a very important, first step.
One thing that always impressed me about you guys is that when we were talking, no matter, who it was that we thought we might go pitch, talk to, get out there, you were always ready to get out in the street and hustle. A lot of the startups I find in certain, environments will sit in the big fancy Accelerator and like just think about things and write on whiteboards and like, pontificate to themselves. But they don't actually get out there and meet people and like, mix things up.
Yeah.
So I remember like an early story, where we had this opportunity, you and I and Dan, your partner, to go off to, of all things, a Canadian Football League semi-final game.
Yeah.
And by happenstance, we had this incredible meeting that took place. You remember that?
I certainly do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe, I'll hop in there because it's, one of the, I suppose, an early and one of the fondest memories of, sort of the beginning of Portl Media. But just to answer to touch on your previous point, that's the way a lot of people fail and fail pretty quickly, is by just becoming complacent, not really getting out there, sharing their vision, meeting new people, because everywhere you go, there is an opportunity, quite honestly. And, we found one at that CFL game. So I believe, and you'll have to remind me about this, but I believe you invited us to the game, which was the CFL sort of quarterfinal game before the Argos ended up winning the Grey Cup that year, wasn't it?
It was a semifinal. And
we semifinal,
the interesting part was that we went there to meet one company.
That's right.
That one didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
But then we, by happenstance, met another guy, kept telling the story. You always got to be out there pitching everyone you meet. It could be in the elevator. It could be back in the back of a rideshare vehicle.
That's right.
But you meet someone, you tell them the story, and then we wound up meeting the CEO of Samsung, right, in the room that day.
Yeah, so the head of Samsung Canada. And, we have you to thank for a lot of that, and, really delivering that, early vision, which, you'd shared even, after our winning that Schulich startup night, you became quite a close mentor to us, right? Which has, been valuable to this day. But we we cornered, if you will, the head of Samsung Canada, and delivered, our vision of what the future could be, both in rideshare vehicles and autonomous vehicles, and really this idea of entertainment everywhere. And, what ended up the result of that rather was actually, allowing Portl Media to, grow substantially with, very little capital, which we at the time we had very little capital, but we were actually able to receive, quite a few tablets because of that meeting, and put them on the road.
Awesome. That was a good moment. I was going to remember that one for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, Vito, you've been here at Schulich as a student, now off building your own business with Treasured and helping other Schulich entrepreneurs here. You see a lot of things that they're like, thinking about, challenges they're having. Like, you've also seen Portl Media. Any things that you think like would be interesting to like ask Wyatt on behalf of our students and our recent alumni?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like one of the things that I think you guys have done really well is try to zero in on what people really want. And what people love. Obviously, entertainment is a big thing, and you can enjoy it in a bunch of different places. I'd like you to talk a little bit about your journey understanding your customer, and talk about that process and sort of the iterative journey of the product, being like a technology solution in vehicles. You've probably learned a lot. So maybe like build on that. I think learning about users is something really important that...
Yeah. And, I would say arguably the most important thing,
yes.
Right? Especially if you're, building a product that somebody engages with, you need to make sure you're focused on that interaction between, machine, computer, tablet, whatever it might be, piece of software, and human, right? So maybe, I'll walk you through a little bit of the... I don't want to call it a roadmap, but the early days of Portl up until we are now, and how we've iterated along the way. So, initially we launched as, I would encourage anybody to do to test their product, a pilot or an MVP. So we put 10 screens on the road in Toronto. And our sole goal, listen, it was, we built a WordPress website that was, hacked together with a variety of, YouTube content and different types of, randomness that really didn't make a whole lot of sense. But, we needed to test whether if we put this screen in the back of a vehicle, somebody was going to touch it or not, right? Because if nobody's using it, then, we don't have anything.
Let's be clear. It was only WordPress, but it was a step up from a piece of cardboard.
That's correct. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Just barely, though. So, we wanted to test, what engagement rates would be like, if at all. We've always been cognizant of and not naive to the fact that people have their cell phones on them, right? I mean, this is something that we carry on us at all times, and something that we feel comfortable with using in any environment. So we wanted to make sure that people were going to use our screens while they had their cell phones on them. I think that's a very important piece. We found out that they did, which was very exciting. Even on those 10 screens with that limited amount of content, it was new, it was exciting, and we got about 9 out of 10 people who got in the back of a vehicle to use the screen for about 5.5 minutes at a time.
Wow.
And to give you some context, the average ride length at that time, it's increased since, but was about 10 to 12 minutes in the city of Toronto. So a good amount of their journey was actually used, playing around with the screen. So we tested engagement rates. Ended up proving that people were going to use this, and we knew that we had something here. So,
and what type of experiences did you have on the tablet during that testing?
Yeah. So in the early days, as I said, it was a little bit of a hack together web application. So we had some games, trivia and card games. Okay. We had a variety of different video content. We had some sports feeds on there, so sort of like highlights and things like that. And what I would call entertaining videos, sort of like almost a gag reel of the funny videos that you see on YouTube every week, right? But since then, and starting from then and until now, we've continued to learn about what people engage with, and use that to optimize our platform to maximize engagement time. So now we have, games that riders can play against other riders to win rideshare credit. We take into account, location and interests in order to customize the content experience. We have, a variety of different partnerships with some, large forward-thinking content producers like NBC Universal, A&E, Attention, Sampler. But really, what we've learned is that, if we keep the content fresh and exciting and really different than what they're typically consuming on their mobile devices, people will use the platform for a long time. So we've maintained that, 80 to 90% engagement rate, but we've actually bumped up our engagement time to about 8.5 minutes now. So almost the entirety of somebody's journey is actually using the
one of the things that I've always thought was interesting about your vision for things is that you're really understanding that you have access to where you're picking people up, the route that they're taking, where they're stopped in traffic, what their end goal is and destination. And whether it's now or whether it's as the product's evolving, how are you starting to see location as being a key piece of the experience? Not only for these rideshare vehicles, but I'm sure you're also thinking about autonomous vehicles and where you guys might fit into that down the road, that whole experience.
Absolutely. The whole thesis of Portl Media, if you will, is we're going to be spending more and more time in the back of vehicles and in transit moving forward until we get to autonomous vehicles, right? So a stat that I love is by 2022, up to 16% of our year will be spent in the back of the vehicle. So that's almost 4 hours. Pretty crazy, pretty almost scary, if you will. But the reality is, people can start living further away because they're being driven. They can do things in the back of vehicles that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. And autonomous vehicles represent even, more exciting opportunities for that, like rerouting rides and things like that. But, we need to be grounded in reality today and build for that future, of course. So, I mean, really what we've started to do is use location and understand how people are using the platform and start to create these user profiles so that when we do get to that, exciting, inevitability of autonomous vehicles, we're able to personalize that experience to the umpteenth degree, for lack of a better word. We almost, envision it like a personal concierge, if you will, or a digital concierge in the back of a rideshare vehicle.
I like that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
That's cool. Now, a lot of founders in Toronto right now, and we read all the stories and the studies, the next Silicon Valley, or maybe something better than Silicon Valley that has a different approach to the
Colder.
world. But we read all these things. a lot of people take one of two approaches, which is like they go all in on Toronto and they just center on like their home base.
Yeah.
And other people have like taken that path of like going off to Silicon Valley or like leaving Toronto behind and going to find that other place in the States. But you guys seem like you've taken like a really specific kind of balanced approach here where you still have your home base and your path in Toronto, but it feels like a big breakthrough moment for you was getting into the NBC Comcast Media Accelerator in Philadelphia, which took you into the States. What's that been like as like a, an entrepreneur coming out of Toronto and Schulich and having that foray into the States? What's it meant to you? But you still stay very close and connected to your home base and the community here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that Toronto is an amazing ecosystem from a technology standpoint, specifically in ML and AI. There's a lot of really exciting things happening here. But, just as the startup ecosystem as a whole, it's flourishing. And yeah, I read the articles that you have about, Toronto being, the hub, if not, one of the top hubs in the world for startups. And that's, I mean, not to say that, that's the only reason that, we still have operations here, but, it's an exciting place to be right now, right? We're also from Toronto, so it's always been a place where we felt comfortable and have a lot of relationships. For our business specifically, I think that, we work with a lot of large content producers and a lot of advertisers. And I think that when we were making the decision whether or not to join, it's a little bit of a mouthful, but the Comcast, NBC, Universal, Lyft Labs Accelerator powered by Techstars.
Well, I didn't get that right on the first one. But
No,
thank you
I should clarify.
I got the first two pieces, but thank you for getting that right.
They'll have my head if I don't
we don't
mention
want
the
that.
whole name. It was an easy decision because, first of all, we were able to partner with one of the biggest media companies in the world, in Comcast and all of its properties like, NBC and many, many more. But also the States is a larger market for both advertising and where they make most of, the content. Canada is typically a licensor of, they license a lot of content from the States through, Rogers, Shaw, Chorus, a variety of other properties. So getting ingrained with, a large media company like that, finding out, how those large organizations operate and really having, sort of main access to that company and those companies or properties, at the main level was and continues to be extremely important to us as a business. So it was a very exciting opportunity to go to the States and has, certainly been very beneficial for us. But we love the Canadian market, Canada and Toronto specifically. Huge rideshare market, pretty good advertising market from a television proxy, if you will. But yeah, we've been very lucky.
And when we touched base after you were going through the process with the accelerator there, it really struck me that you felt that it was an impactful experience, right?
Yeah.
Some people go into an accelerator and then they come through and they're like, I got some contacts and there was a pitch night, but I really don't know if it impacted what we were going to do. Other people say like I actually got de-accelerated by the accelerator, but you felt that this one really added some real insights. And what were a couple of things that you think were not only that you took away from it, but were the key to how you approached the accelerator and your time there that unlocked those possibilities for you?
Yeah. Well, I think, accelerators and many programs, really just your whole startup is what you make it, right? So as you mentioned previously, Dan and I are both, we're true hustlers, right? There's not a event, meeting, podcast, whatever that we wouldn't go to spread the word of Portl and, share our journey, because you really, that's where you get serious value, right, is through those connections. So, that we took that approach, during the accelerator. We met every single person we could. We tried to get in on pilots, however small. We, shared our vision with, everybody from the bottom floor to the C-suite, and it was very beneficial for us. We entered into, several pilots, both non-paid and paid. Through there, we were able to actually negotiate a deal with one of the largest telcos in the United States, which really helped, our hardware solution. and we work out of their head office right now. So we're very close with Comcast and NBC Universal. And the Accelerator was an amazing experience. I wouldn't go into an Accelerator just thinking that it's going to be, easy street, and after that there's going to be a demo day and you're going to raise money, because that's just not the reality. But there's so much value to be gained along the way through those connections, and really, moving quickly and trying to realize those opportunities as they come along.
Perfect. Now, Vito, we have like Schulich Startup Night coming up pretty soon, March 7th. We're all excited about that. We've got, today happens to be like the pilot episode. It's also deadline day for people to send in their applications.
Yeah.
I think we got about 19 when I last checked. What do you think, what would be the key question if they were sitting here and they're going to have to go into that pitch competition? What should they be asking Wyatt?
Yeah. I would say, before that question, I was thinking about like the hustle, right? And I think showing hustle in a pitch that you're really working hard towards traction, and that you're doing this thing for real is something that really stands out to judges. We have a great startup in the Schulich ecosystem called Blade Filters, and these guys are doing interchangeable carbon filters for the cannabis industry, and these guys they're on the ground with their filters at like licensed producers, at growers, and I think that's done a lot for them to show investors, to show judges in these competitions that they're really on the ground, like running and working hard. Maybe talk to the importance of that in the pitch, and maybe if you have a story after, like a cool story. You said you guys are hustlers, which you are. So giving a story to a young undergrad or an MBA that's aspiring. What is a hustle story to you? I think is probably a follow-up question after.
Yeah. I mean, where do I sort of begin there? I think honestly the story sort of answers the question, if you will. Because the story of Portl Media is the story of two guys filling up backpacks full of tablets and taking Uber rides and convincing drivers to install tablets in their cars without any benefit, really, other than the hope of better ratings and tips. So, I mean, that's how Portl Media got started, right? And I think that's not an easy, task when you're,
totally.
Paying personally to go take, tens, if not hundreds of Uber rides and just pitch nonstop to, quite honestly, an amazing community, but one that, first of all, English isn't their typically first language, or even understanding, the fact that the tablet needs to be, charged all the time and, on in front of customers. So we spent a lot of time doing that. And I think that that's really what shines through is, however small, however early, just go out and do something, right? You just have to get in front of people, and you have to start getting some real world feedback, because, unfortunately there's a reality that might be, people don't need or engage well with or appreciate, maybe what you're building. And I think that that's fine. I also think that the earlier that you learn how it's received in the real world is going to be beneficial for you in the long run.
I think that's
I
great
hope that
advice.
answers your question.
I think it does. I mean, is there a specific story, let's say in the recent months, of you and Dan out in Philly, as two Canadians, hustling, and it might have been a connection that you formed?
I'm going to jump in there and lead you with one particular story. So
sure.
The thing about Wyatt and Dan, right, is that they're fearless, and they're totally ready to ask anyone for anything. So I'm going to rewind back to Schulich Startups Night 9, right?
Nice.
Where it was 3 minutes after the night was over. The crowd was having a beautiful time. I was finally relaxed because the competition was done, and we had the 300 people out, and it was amazing. And Wyatt and Dan were in the hall, said they needed a couple minutes with me, and they put me up against the wall and told me that they had a really huge opportunity, and they needed $15,000 in 48 hours. In fact, they said
I think it was 24
hours. They said they needed 30,
yeah.
But they already had some 15 from someone else, so would I be willing to give them the 15?
Yeah.
These guys are ready to go anywhere and to break through and do whatever it takes. So we really appreciate that when we watch your journey.
Yeah.
and think that, you know, that part of your story, what you're doing with technology, but also that hustle and drive you have, is you guys are real role models for the students and the recent grads at Schulich that are building their company. So tell us, you know, if people want to check you guys out, follow you, get engaged, you know, offer up their services, know a rideshare driver who should be having this in the back of their car, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully you'll you know, all be seeing us soon in the back of your rideshare vehicle. But of course, you can visit portlmedia.com. That's PORTL media.com. No A. As a, you know, true startup, you need to drop a vowel. You can also reach out hello@portlmedia.com. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just at Portl Media. And I'm more than happy to even share my personal email, which is Wyatt@portlmedia.com. As a Schulich alum, as a founder, as any entrepreneur, more than happy to help. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And I'll do my best to you know, shed some light on whatever you're pondering at the moment.
Wyatt, thanks for being here with us today. We had a great time. Vito,
Thank
awesome
you.
as always. Look forward to
Awesome.
seeing what's going with Treasured.
Yeah.
For the record, I did loan them the $15,000
Okay,
in
great.
48 hours, and it's turned out very well. Yeah. So thanks for being with us today. This has been a lot of fun, and
Yeah,
we've enjoyed being here together on the first ever pilot episode of Schulich Startups Podcast, and we'll be back again soon.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.